Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Buriak, and I'm the Senior Vice President over here at Jet Lending. And today's educational topic for the investment community is going to be to go over a certain group of things that start making your properties worth less, especially within your initial analysis. How investors can get caught up on certain types of properties, not understanding that this particular property is actually worth less than possibly the house across the street from. Okay, so we're going to go over some basic concepts. It's not all encumbrances, but it's going to be enough for you guys to impose a thought. All these educational videos are supposed to inspire a thought process so you guys can make better decisions when you guys are out there trying to contract properties, analyze them, and do all your due diligence to see if this is going to be the right investment for you for your profit margins. So let's bring up a couple different topics. When you guys are out there looking to buy properties, there are some certain things that are going to deter value from a particular type of property. One of the biggest ones that a lot of investors miss is that the subject property is on a busy street. Now, what does that mean, busy street? Okay. It's not necessarily like the busiest street in the subdivision. First, what we're going to break down into if you live in the Houston area, if you are like on TC Jester, Ella, Kirkendall, like it's a major road. It's like a 4-lane road or more. You know, there's a divider and traffic's going both directions. You know, there's commercial on it. You know, I mean, this is a major road. Busy streets tend to reduce your subject property's value by at least 20%. So when you guys are doing your due diligence, and let's say you guys are in like Oak Forest or something like that, and you're considering buying a property like on Ella or TC Jester or something like that, and let's say you don't have enough comps to, or like on Ella, to justify a value, what you'll do is you'll take what is comparable in the market and for that subject house, and then you'll do your 20% plus or minus your square footage of your subject property, which is comparable range, comparable date range. Don't try not to use new builds against old builds, but you would take about the average of that and deduct 20%. So when you're on a busy street, it's more valuable to actually comp the properties that are on the same street only, within about maybe 1,000 to 2,000 units plus or minus. It's probably like 2 or 3 blocks either direction. Okay, especially on a busy street, because you guys have seen when you're driving on a busy street, 2 or 3 blocks can be a completely different neighborhood. Okay, so you want to make sure you look at those, and you're probably saying, well, if I do have access to MLS and I do have access to all these things, but there's no comparables within the last 6 months or 12 months. What you'll do is you'll take the date range away, okay? And you'll actually try to get a full history of like maybe 5 years or so, and take those properties and then add the appreciation every year. So if a property was sold in 2018 and it's 2024, and you're averaging maybe 5% appreciation a year, you would add the 5% every year to see what that subject property would be worth today. And that's actually more valuable than pulling comps that are sold last 6 months within the subdivision on that streets. Okay, so let's just here and close this. Like being live, So, and just to remind you guys, so people that are watching it now, you guys can ask me questions live. If you guys are watching afterwards, you can guys put your questions in the comments, and I'll answer them later. Okay, and I will put a link to all of our educational videos in the comments now, so you guys can see that we are live. So that's one of the big things about busy streets. Okay, you got to really, really take a look at what's going on that street. Okay. The next deterring factor that you guys will see in single family 1 to 4 properties is that your property is adjacent to or facing a commercial property. And that's all commercial. It could be apartment complexes, it could be strip centers, it could be a gas station, it could be a retail center, whatever it is. And you actually start seeing some of this in some pretty prominent areas in central Houston, where properties in the subdivision are selling for $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. but your property is next to a strip center, or the backyard there's an HEB, or across the street there's a school or a fiveplex or whatever, that actually deters value. Okay. And you're probably going to want to deduct anywhere from, depending on the type of commercial it is, probably about 10 to 20%. 20% is a little steep, but you have to know that, especially in that price point, you are going to get some deterrent value. Okay, when you have a single family property that has that type of structure next door, and kind of add on, like, there's a water sewage plant next door, things like that, things that are going to deter the value of it. You have to be a little concerned on days on market if the next door house is basically a junker. Like, you're no matter what price point, if the next door neighbor's house is basically a junkyard, which happens all the time, you have to project days on market to increase. You have to project your holding costs, and you actually have to project a little decrease in value, even though that is not forever. That's what it is today. Okay, and you have people trying to flip a house, or you're gonna get some deterrent value on that. Okay, so just be aware of things like that. Some items that are on your property that are deterrents that actually decrease some value. If they're not deal killers, and none of these are deal killers. You have to just buy them right. That's the key thing about this. Why we're going over a value. It's not that you shouldn't buy properties on a busy street. It's not that you shouldn't buy properties that are facing or adjacent to commercial. It's not that you shouldn't buy them, but you have to understand how to buy them, because you can't use the comparables that are in the subdivision that don't compare to that property. Okay, so if your property has unique qualifications and unique specifications, you have to put those into your due diligence. And that's why people come to Jet all the time for analysis, is because we do that for our borrowers, each one of them. Okay, some other deterring values: power lines in the yard, things like that. They're deterrents if all the properties have it in their yard. It's something to consider, but then you look at your other comparable sales on that and see how they measure up. They're not as bad as busy streets, and they're not as bad as commercial. The other one that gets people really good is that your property is weird. Okay, not that the property is in disarray. That's what you're buying. You're buying distressed real estate. What I'm telling you is your property sits on the lot weird. Like, there's no backyard. It's all front yard. Your property sits downward on a hill. Like, you have to the driveway actually goes down. Like, the water goes to your house. Okay, that's one thing on due diligence you have to really look for if there's water coming in. You need a lot of French drains everywhere and stuff like that. That's going to deter value. It's going to increase days on market, especially when all the other houses aren't like that. Okay. Your property, it looks weird. Everything's fine, and you're an A-frame. It's like, again, it's not that you don't buy it, but it's going to reduce the potential value if it's not comparable to the other properties. One of the worst things investors will do is they'll blindly go by price per square foot. And that's a good mathematical equation to get averages. But then you have to look at the property itself, and is the property itself comparable? Is everything slab and brick, and yours is on bricks and it's wood siding? That's going to deter a little value. Okay, you have to really pay attention to the comparable aspect of things. Do they compare? Not just by size. Okay, so size is very important, but you also have to look, does it look the same? Am I going to make it look the same? To get on the same idea on what other things deter value is HVAC. If your property has window units and everybody else that have been rehabbed has HVAC, you have to put in HVAC or it's going to deter value. Okay, and that's one of the things that's a lot of times, like, putting a new roof on, is it going to really increase value? No. But is it going to sell your house? Definitely. So you decrease the days on market. So making the amenities comparable to your comparable properties as well. What else? What else will deter value on a property? If you going over square footage, you're buying a property, built in 1972, and it has an ADU. And for those who don't know what that is, like think of it as like an apartment. Usually, it's over the garage, okay, or something like that. And let's say they even did that part right. That the breezeway is connected to the roof line, so you can count the square footage. These are the things you have to understand. Like, if you don't go like with the code that's in your area on what square footage counts. So let's say they even did it right. Let's say the breezeway is connected by the roof line and to each roof line, so you can count the square footage. Then you go into the unit, and people are like, oh, you know what? There's an add-on, and dude, this was 1,400 square foot, but now it's 2,200 square foot. You're like, oh, cool. You do your price per square foot. But the roof, or part of the roof, or ceiling, I should say, is 7 foot. You can't count that square footage now, because the appraisers are going to look at where the 8 foot line is. Some people say 7.5. I always said 8. Somebody look that up and correct me if I'm wrong, but 8 feet. So if you have an angled ceiling and only a portion in the middle is 8 feet, well, you can't use the rest of it. So it's not all increased square footage. If it's not connected to the roof line, you can't use that square footage. So, and those are things that you'll find out after you close. Okay. So you bought the house for too much. And that's why, again, people come to like Jet Lending, so we can try to help catch these things and protect our clients, because we have to make sure that everything's in leverage. Everything makes sense. Okay. So those are some things that can deter value. You think it's worth more, but you can't even use that. You can't even use that square footage because it wasn't done right. So those are some key issues that are going to deter value in a property when you're doing due diligence. It's on a busy street. It's a weird property. It's placed on the lot wrong. There's water going to it. There's power lines on it. It's adjacent or facing commercial. All those things can cause a deterrence in value. Just on a side note on determining value, just be very careful on your year builds and the transitioning areas. Try to make sure you don't compare new builds with rehabs. If you have to use new builds against your rehab, it's probably take a 20% deduction of the rehab against the new build. So for argument's sake, let's say the new build was worth $100,000. That means your property at the same square footage should be worth 80. Okay, because there is a difference between new construction and a rehab. Okay, so those are some major things that can really deter value when you're in your due diligence phase on looking at properties. The big easy street is the one that gets people the most. They never understood. But if you're buying a house that's $150,000, if you're buying a house that's $950,000, and you have a problem getting into your property, one, it's going to increase days on market, and two, they are not comparable to the subdivision properties. Don't let anybody tell you differently. It is not the same thing. So that's where a lot of investors get burned on value. They buy something on a busy street. That's the biggest one. And the other one would be like square footage. So to kind of recap, really look at the property in whole and look at your comparables in whole and see how do they compare. So it's not just an average on square footage and you do your multiplication. It's great. It would be fantastic if that was the case, but you have to dig deeper. And that's why investors get teams. That's why investors get partners. That's why investors get people to look after them to say, did you see this? Jet Lending's done over 4,000 loans. The owners have done over 1,900 themselves outside of Jet Lending. We look at so many properties a day. We've done so many deals. We've probably done a property near your subject property. And that's why people come to us and say, what do you think? And it doesn't mean we're right. It doesn't mean we're wrong. We just use evidence to give an idea to say, this is what's probable. What would you like to do today? And you make your business decision. So I hope this helped. I hope our education helps. Again, look in the chat. You'll see a link to all of our videos. If you guys want me to do a video on a certain topic, let me know. If you want your deals analyzed for free, go to the website and give us your information. We'll tell you this is what we think about your property. If you want to close really fast, we'll give you the money to do it. if it's short-term or long-term. Let us help you. Let us be a part of your team. Let us educate you to make you more efficient and more successful in buying your investment properties. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.